Hello everyone. So the first reveal of the Curse of Osiris expansion just happened, but I imagine the people who watched mainly want my opinion on the new raid content that was revealed just now. So this video is mainly going to cover my thoughts on that, the new raid content. The story aspect of Curse of Osiris, to keep things very brief, although minor spoiler warning, I'm going to set up some context here starting in 3, 2, 1. That giant pulse of light from the end game triggered a Vex gate on Mercury. We need to find out what's going on, and Ikora tells you to go investigate. Osiris is involved in some way, and for those who don't know, Osiris is a somewhat notorious figure in the Destiny universe, considered one of the, if not the most powerful warlock to ever live. In terms of any other stuff from the stream that isn't about the raid content, the Heroic Strike playlist is coming back at 270 power. I did not see any modifiers on it though, and I can't really praise Bungie too much for bringing back something that probably should have already been around in the first place. And that 270 power is factoring in the power level increase coming with the expansion. The Lighthouse has been retooled a little bit to service as a social space. Brother Vance will be your vendor. I'm trying to keep things light on the spoiler territory. I'm sure someone else has covered most of this at this point. We'll be seeing and hearing a female ghost in-game for the first time, Osiris's ghost. That's pretty neat. After you complete the campaign, there will be some post-campaign content where you go around forging some of the Osiris-themed weapons, the ones infused with Vex-looking stuff on them, using this thing called the Forge. They didn't really elaborate on it. I don't know if they're individual quest lines or if it's some sort of crafting system, but we'll probably find out more news on that soon. That's mainly it in terms of, features and stuff. There's plenty of nuances that I left out that were in the stream that I'm sure someone else covered. Stuff about the destination of Mercury and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's get to it. The new raid content. What is it? The new raid content is going to send us back to the Leviathan. That sound you just heard was the collective groan of everyone watching this video. Hang on. We're not going to be hitting the same encounters. The new content is called a raid lair, L-A-I-R, not layer, where we go back into the Leviathan, but into a different section of it, with new encounters, new puzzles, new bosses. It won't be as long as a brand new raid typically is, which for some people is great to hear, and for some people maybe not. This lair is called Eater of Worlds. Power levels for the game have been increased in the expansion to 330 or 335 with mods, along with a character level increase to level 25, and the Leviathan has been scaled up to keep it relevant during the year. The expansion following Curse of Osiris will also have a new Leviathan raid lair. There will be a prestige mode for this, along with new gear and weapons for the raid lair, although my assumption is that the prestige will be handled in the same way it is now with gearing, but that's all that is, an assumption. The motivation behind this style of doing raid content is that they wanted to continue to have a steady flow of raid content of varying duration. Hey, all I ever hear is how people don't have time for a full raid, so it makes sense. And they wanted to have raid content during the entire year instead of going long periods of time with nothing. I'm looking at you, entirety of Taken King and most of Rise of Iron. The launch date for this will be shortly after the expansion launches. An exact date was not given, but it won't be exactly at expansion launch. If I were to guess, it would be probably 3 days after. Okay, where do we start? First off, to anyone who's going to say, this is just lazy, they didn't want to make a new raid, they ran out of time so they made this instead, just drop it. This was obviously a very deliberate move by Bungie from the get-go when they were developing the raid itself and planning for the future. Raid content isn't something you can exactly just pivot on a couple of months out and say, oh crap, we got to do something else now. We don't have time to finish a full raid. They didn't design the place with a million doorways for nothing, I'll tell you that much. And the fact that a new door opens up and leads us to a section that we haven't been to yet, at least at the start, is promising. I imagine we'll still see some very familiar themes from the original Leviathan in the new stuff, but it is still going to be new encounters. And unless we're going into the same rooms that we've been in, I really don't consider this a reskin, but even then, like I said, we're getting new boss encounters anyway. And you know what? I'm glad that they're taking this style of approach, at least compared to previous iterations of raid content releases. Vault of Glass was solid as a first raid experience. Then we got Crota's End 3 months later, which unfortunately set up the community expectation that we would have a full raid every single expansion, which at first Crota's End was solid, the first couple of runs, but eventually the community sort of tore it apart. And I don't think you can eat your Dark Below had a new raid cake and have your Crota's End, lol, it was barely a strike cake too. Prison of Elders? You guys want to know the Prison of Elders? Skolas, was a pretty good 3-man encounter, but let's not pretend Prison of Elders was the pinnacle of endgame content. And then we had King's Fall, which was great as a raid, love King's Fall, for an entire year, which is not as great. Then we had Wrath of the Machine for almost an entire year, and if we didn't get Age of Triumph, that's probably all we would have gotten for the entire year. So yeah, I'll take new raid content sprinkled throughout the year as opposed to sitting around for a full year with nothing. I assume then, in year 5 or whatever comes out in September, we'll have a new full raid for whatever that ends up being, along with more raid layers after that in follow-up content releases. If we don't get a new raid in September, then yeah, I'll be upset, and you should be upset, and everybody should be upset. But it's pretty obvious that trying to have a raid every single expansion is not sustainable for Bungie, otherwise they would probably do it. And if this is their way of trying to at least try to appease hardcore players or hardcore raiders, then I welcome it. At least they're drifting in our direction a little bit, Raid, then 2 new raid wings during the year, then new raid next year. Sounds like a plan to me. To me, and I've said this plenty of times, the thing I care about most with raids and raid content is whether or not they are fun to do, not necessarily where they are. From a development point of view, this system makes a lot of sense, although I do understand that it is not our job as players to sympathize with developers in terms of what we end up playing, but it certainly helps to understand how things are actually developed, and a little bit of sympathy is, not terrible. Now, before you head to the comments, hang on, wait. Do I wish that we had a full new Vex-themed raid on Mercury? Yes, I do, very badly. That would have been much more preferred than heading back to Leviathan, where I gotta shoot the same damn Cabal shield in the exact middle for 80 shots before it'll go down for only half a second. We're okay. I'd much rather have a raid where we even go into a zone with Osiris and have to, stop whatever ominous Vex thing has happened, especially on Mercury, which appears to look awesome. Imagine an Infinite Forest raid or something. Infinite Forest is the thing in Curse of Osiris if you watch the reveal. That would have been great. Oh, that would have been so great. It's a Vex-themed expansion. I want a Vex raid. We haven't had one in years. This was the perfect time to do it, and we didn't get it. And that's a disappointment. However, we don't know what is actually in the Leviathan in the new stuff, and while I am skeptical that there will be any sort of Osiris-themed stuff within it, there's probably a chance, right? There's maybe a very, very small chance. If anything deserves the continue to develop this treatment, in my opinion, it's the Leviathan, because it was left so open-ended. There wasn't full resolution like there was in raids past. My biggest problem with most Destiny story-related things has been, and will probably continue to be, that stories are always wrapped up in a very short amount of time. I thought the Red War with Gaul was going to be an ongoing saga lasting a year, maybe even the entirety of Destiny 2 based on how it was hyped up. Instead, we wrapped up that storyline by ourselves, came home, and dinner was still hot on our plate. It was just done. And I thought the Leviathan was going to be the same thing. We'd be blue-balled with hopes of meeting Callus or finding out more about his situation or whatever, having to wait for future expansions for any chance of seeing him, or maybe never even seeing him at all. I do hope we see the likes of Callus again. And I hope that storyline is expanded on in the future. But if this new raid activity is going to provide some more context on Callus, then I'm excited for that. But, let's go back to the negative side. But, a big issue that Bungie still needs to overcome is the reward economy. And obviously, they weren't going to talk about that in the first reveal stream when they said they were going to talk about story. They need to continue to provide some reason to get people into the raid beyond a couple of clears. That's a problem that's going on now. There's not even a raid emblem that counts your Leviathan completions. Like, come on. If the prestige loot system is the same as it is now, there are going to be a bunch of upset people. And to be honest, I don't see that specific sort of reward system shifting in this expansion, but we'll need to wait and see for that reveal stream to shed some light on if things are actually going to change. So, in short, do I wish we had a Mercury Vex raid as opposed to this? Absolutely. Am I glad that we're getting something at all that is 6-player focused and is new, to a degree, new? Absolutely. It beats the crap out of getting nothing, which is what we're used to over the past 2 years. Could this set up how we'll be experiencing raids in the future and how we will be delivered raid content in the future? Absolutely. I'm sure some people have been saying, just bring back Vault of Glass instead and stuff like that. I think you would have seen a much larger negative response to Bungie just bringing back Vault of Glass, no matter how well revered it is in the community. That alone would set the precedent that it's okay to just bring back Destiny 1 content as is. So, would the fact that it's well-liked, Vault of Glass, offset the fact that it's not new? To me, probably not. I would be okay with Vault of Glass returning if it was in addition to anything that we're getting now, not as a replacement, or if they just randomly threw Vault of Glass at us in the middle of February or something, like bam, here's Vault of Glass in Destiny 2, have fun, go do it. In terms of any overall thoughts about the expansion, I think the fact that we are getting some form of raid content seals Curse of Osiris as potentially the best of the $20 expansions we've gotten so far. I can hear you saying, "Ooh, that's not really saying much," but it's something. I still think the story is going to be similar in duration, maybe 6 to 8 story missions, taking you 2.5, maybe 3 hours to complete. But at the very least, it'll be better than the first two $20 expansions. There will probably be a new PvP map, a new strike, a sandbox update, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. I do not, however, anticipate sweeping changes to the endgame in this expansion. 3 months is not a lot of development time, and I imagine most of this expansion was being completed maybe a couple of weeks after Destiny 2 launched, and then went into testing and all that kind of stuff, certification. So to be able to not only generate data and compile community opinion, and then actually develop a robust solution to those problems and implement it in such a short amount of time is more or less asking the impossible, or close to the impossible. That's just me making assumptions, though. We are still waiting on the reveal for how rewards will work in Curse of Osiris, so maybe there are some bigger changes coming, but my personal guess is that more significant retooling of the reward economy will come in either DLC 2 or the assumed September expansion. Please do not take that as me making excuses for Bungie, because guess what? It's going to suck, and I'm going to be upset if we don't have significant adjustments to the endgame with the expansion in terms of the reward system and the reward economy. All I'm trying to do there is provide some context for why we might potentially not see significant change. You have every right to be mad. You can be mad all you want. All I ask is that you try to understand the potential situation at hand. We'll talk more on that when rewards are revealed in the reveal streams. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.